In this video, we will be continuing on with the KutaSoftware Infinite Algebra 2 free worksheet systems of two equations. Now in this next section, we're going to be solving each system by substitution, essentially finding that intersection point between the two. So looking at number 5, we have that y equals 4x minus 9, and we also have that y equals x minus 3. So we can either take 4x minus 9 and plug it in for this y, or we can take x minus 3 and plug it in for this y because y equals y. So let's do the latter and take x minus 3 and plug it in for y. So now we'll have x minus 3 equal to 4x minus 9. And then we'll solve. I'll move the x to the right-hand side, and I'll move my 9 to the left-hand side. So essentially, I have my terms with the variable on the right and my constants on the left. Negative 3 plus 9 is a positive 6, and that's equal to 4x minus x, which is 3x. Now, in order to solve for x, I'll divide both sides by 3 to get that 2 is equal to x. So we have our x coordinate, or our x value, for this system, but now we need our y value. And in order to get the y value, we will take x and plug it in to either the first equation or the second equation. It doesn't matter which one we choose, we just need to solve for y. Let's plug it into the second equation because we're not going to have to multiply that x because it doesn't have a coefficient like the first one. So we'll get that y equals 2 minus 3, therefore y equals negative 1. So our solution in number 5 is 2, negative 1. Let's continue on to number 6. In number 6, we have 4x plus 2y equals 10, and we have x minus y equals 13. Now I need to solve for one variable in order to substitute it in. So let's solve for x. If we add y to both sides in this bottom equation, we'll get that x is equal to 13 plus y. So I'm going to take 13 plus y and plug it in for x because x is equal to that. So I'll have 4 times 13 plus y plus 2y equal to 10. I'll need to distribute that 4, so multiplying it to 13 and multiplying it to y. 4 times 13 is 52, plus 4 times y is 4y, plus 2y, and that's equal to 10. So combining my like terms, I'll combine 4y with 2y, and I'll subtract 52 from both sides. 4y plus 2y equals 6y, so I'll get that 6y is equal to 10 minus 52, which is negative 42. So now I'll divide by 6 in order to solve for y and get that y is equal to a negative 7. So now that I have y equal to negative 7, I'm going to take my value of y, plug it in, and solve for x. But as opposed to taking negative 7 and plugging it in for y in the original equation, I'm going to plug it in for the y in the equation which we've already solved for x. So then I'll get that x equals 13 plus negative 7, so x is going to be equal to a positive 6. 6, negative 7 is my solution to the system. In number 7, it gives me that y is negative 5. So right away, y is already solved for, so I just need to solve for x. And I'll substitute negative 5 in for y in order to solve for x. So I'll have 5x plus 4 times negative 5 equal to negative 20. So that's 5x plus 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. That's going to be equal to negative 20. So now I'll add 20 to both sides in order to cancel out 20 on my left, because negative 20 plus 20 is 0. So that'll leave me with 5x on the left, and negative 20 plus 20 is 0, so 0 on my right. Then all I have to do is divide by 5 to get that x is equal to 0, because 0 divided by any number is 0. So x is 0 and y is negative 5 for number 7. In number 8, I'll go ahead and subtract 7y from both sides in my first equation. So I'll have x plus 7y equal to 0, and if I subtract 7y from both sides, I get that x is equal to negative 7y. So I'm going to take that value of x, which is negative 7y, and plug it into my other equation. So I will get 2 times negative 7y minus 8y equal to 22. 2 times negative 7 will be negative 14, so negative 14y minus 8y equals 22. Negative 14y minus 8y is equivalent to negative 22y. So I have that negative 22y equals 22, and when I divide by negative 22, I'll get that y is equivalent to negative 1. So if y equals negative 1, I can take that value of negative 1 and plug it back into my original equations in order to solve for x. Or I can plug it into this equation that I've already set equal to x. So then I'll have x equal to negative 7 times negative 1. So x will equal a positive 7. So my solution in number 8 is 7, negative 1. X equals 7 and y is negative 1. Continuing on to number 9, I have that y equals negative 5. So since it gives me that y is already negative 5, all I need to do is plug negative 5 in for y in that first equation to solve. So I'll have 6x plus 8 times negative 5 equal to negative 22. That's 6x plus 8 times negative 5 is negative 40, and that's equivalent to negative 22. Now when I add 40 to both sides, I'll get that 6x is equal negative 22 plus 40 gives me a positive 18. And when I divide by 6, which will help me isolate my x on my left-hand side, I'll get that 18 divided by 6 is equal to 3. So 3, negative 5 is my solution in number 9. In number 10, I'll start by looking at this bottom equation and I'll subtract 6x from both sides. That will give me that 6y is equal to negative 6x. Now all I need to do is divide both sides by 6 in order to get that y is equal to a negative x. So if y equals negative x, I'll take negative x and plug it in for y in my first equation. So I will have negative 7x plus 2 times negative x equals a positive 18. And that's negative 7x plus negative 2x equals 18. So negative 9x equals 18, and when I divide by negative 9, I'll get that x equals a negative 2. So if x equals negative 2 and y equals negative x, I'll take negative 2 and plug it in for x to get that y equals the opposite of negative 2, therefore y equals a positive 2. So my solution in number 10 is negative 2, positive 2. Let's continue on to number 11. In number 11, I can set this bottom equation equal to x by subtracting 2y from both sides to get that negative x equals negative 2y plus 21, and then I'll multiply both sides by negative 1 to get that positive x. So x is equal to 2y minus 21. Now I'll plug 2y minus 21 in for x in my first equation, because since I manipulated that bottom equation, I'll then substitute it in for the top equation. So we'll have 7 times 2y minus 21 plus 2y equal to negative 19. I have to distribute the 7 to both the 2y and the 21. 7 times 2y is 14y, and then I'll be subtracting 7 times 21, which is 147, and then adding 2y to that quantity to get negative 19. So combining my like terms, I'll combine 14y and 2y together, and then I'll also add 147 to both sides. That way I get 16y, because 14y plus 2y equals 16y, and that's on my left-hand side, and then negative 19 plus 147 equals a positive 128. and dividing both sides by 16, I'll get that y is equal to a positive 8. So if y equals 8, I'll take that value of 8 and plug it back in to the equation that I set equal to x. So I will get that x equals 2 times 8 minus 21, which 2 times 8 is 16, and 16 minus 21 will give me a negative 5. So x is negative 5 and y is 8. So negative 5, 8 is my solution in number 11. Now on to number 12. For number 12, it already gives us the value of y. Y is negative 7. So all we need to do is plug negative 7 in for y in our first equation to solve for x. So we'll get 3x minus 5 times negative 7 equal to 17. So that's going to be 3x minus 5 times negative 7 will be minus a negative 35. But if we're subtracting a negative, that's the same as adding a positive 35, and that's equal to 17. Now we'll subtract 35 from both sides in order to isolate our term with x. So we'll get that 3x equals 17 minus 35, which is negative 18. And finally, we'll divide by 3 to get that x is equal to a negative 6. So negative 6, negative 7 is our solution for number 12. Now number 13, I'll add 4y to both sides in this bottom equation. And I'm doing so because 4 and 4 are divisible by the same numbers and therefore can be simplified. So I'll get that 4x equals 4y. And then when I divide both sides by 4, I'll get that x is equal to y. So if x equals y, once I solve for one, I know what the other one is. So I'll take x and plug y in for x in my first equation. Therefore, negative 7 times y, since x is equal to y, plus 4y equals 24. Negative 7y plus 4y will be negative 3y, and that's equal to positive 24. When I divide by negative 3, I'll get that y is equal to a negative 8. But remember that y is equal to x, or x is equal to y, so negative 8 is also equal to x. Therefore, in number 13, I have negative 8 as my solution. Now, on to number 14. In number 14, I'll solve my first equation for y. So I'll take 4x minus y equals 20, and I'll subtract 4x from both sides. That will give me that negative y equals negative 4x plus 20. Now in order to get this y positive, I'll multiply by negative 1 or divide by negative 1 to give me that y is equal to a positive 4x, because negative 1 times negative 4x is positive 4x, and then minus 20, since negative 1 times 20 is a negative 20, and adding a negative is the same as subtracting a positive. So now I'll be taking 4x minus 20 and plugging it in for y in my second equation. So I'll have negative 2x minus 2 times 4x minus 20. That's going to be equal to 10. So I'm going to need to distribute this 2 to the 4x and to the 20. So I'll have negative 2x minus 2 times 4x will be minus 8x, and then I'm subtracting 2 times negative 20, which is subtracting negative 40, which is the same as adding a positive 40. And that's going to be equal to positive 10. Now I'll combine my like terms on my left-hand side, and I'll also subtract 40 from both sides. Negative 2x minus 8x is negative 10x. 40 minus 40 is 0. So negative 10x is going to equal 10 minus 40, which is negative 30. Dividing by negative 10 on both sides will give me that x is equal to a positive 3, since negative 30 divided by negative 10 is 3. Now I'm going to take that value of 3 and plug it back in for either of my equations, or I can plug it into the equation that I already set equal to y to make it easier. So plugging that in for x, I'll get that y is equal to 4 times 3 minus 20. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 minus 20 will equal a negative 8. So my solution in number 14 is 3, negative 8. Now, just because I completed this problem one way does not mean there's not another way or multiple other ways to solve. For example, in this bottom equation, you could have recognized that everything's an even number and divided both sides by 2 at the start to get negative x minus y equal to 5. And then you could have solved for either x or y and then plugged that into the first equation, as opposed to what I did, where I solved the first equation for y and then took that y and plugged it into the second equation. So go ahead and try a different method. You don't necessarily have to do each problem the way I do it, although regardless of how you complete a problem, we will reach the same conclusion, that the solution in number 14 is 3, negative 8. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And before continuing on to the next, where we will be solving each system by elimination, click that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this with your peers.